This year at Cannes Lions, the biggest and best ideas in advertising address systems, infrastructure, and public service. Hey Carnies, and welcome back to the Daily Carnage Show. I'm Shannon, I'm a digital marketing strategist at Carney, and I'm your host. And just like last season, I'm giving you our Carney shortlist for the Cannes Lions Titanium category. So grab your drink and let's get started. So if you're not familiar, the Titanium Lions is the biggest and best category at the Cannes Lions. It exists to represent ideas that break the taxonomy of advertising itself. Unlike other categories, there are no craft silos, no format constraints. The winner can be a campaign, a system, a platform, a piece of infrastructure. Sometimes it's a piece that barely looks like advertising at all. Essentially, the only requirement is that it meaningfully advances what branded communications can be. And so every year the jury looks for work that is provocative, that breaks boundaries. Not just these dime a dozen campaigns that we see that are effective and beautiful, but work that is genuinely shifting the industry, forcing us, our peers, to rethink how we operate as marketers and communicators. The kinds of campaigns you see on the Titanium shortlist are work that turns campaigns into systems, or invites audiences to be participants, or turns media into infrastructure itself. And every year I feel like the work in this category raises the bar, raises expectations for brands and agencies. This work often kind of demands that we consider the question, how can we uniquely make life better for our audiences? And so that's why I love doing this episode. The Titanium Lions feel closer to civic systems and product design and cultural intervention than it does traditional marketing that just benefits consumption. There are 18 selections on the 2026 shortlist, and I encourage you to give yourself a brain break today and check out all of the case studies. But I'm going to share with you my top 5 in no order. And first up is 600K Network by Rainbow Lobster, Mexico City, and Comando con Venezuela, Caracas. So during Venezuela's 2024 presidential election, each polling station produced an official results record known as an acta, and these documents included QR codes that encoded structured voting data from each table. And so it was effectively a machine-readable snapshot of the vote at the precinct level. Basically, this system was intended for administrative efficiency, not public redistribution, which is what we ended up using it for. Some really smart people realized that this infrastructure could be independently verified in real time before centralized reporting introduced delays or potential manipulation risk. And so over the course of several months, organizers trained and coordinated over 600,000 volunteers. So on election day, these volunteers secretly scanned QR codes directly from physical actas at polling stations across more than 15,000 voting centers and 30,000 individual voting tables. This improvised system had to work without centralized control. It relied on consumer smartphones, and it had to function in environments with inconsistent connectivity. But all of this information was aggregated into a parallel data set that mirrored the official vote count structure. This effort allowed organizers to capture and verify a significant majority of available precinct-level results, reportedly around 85% of voting records. And this is before official national tallies were finalized. There was no paid media push, no advertising spend, no brand product at the center of this. It was just a decentralized communication system.
The regime responded with violence. More than 2,000 citizens were imprisoned. In 2025, the Nobel Peace Prize honored the Venezuelan people who had been defending the truth for years, this time with a phone in their hands. When transparency wasn't guaranteed, citizens built it themselves.
What's amazing here is most campaigns that we see are produced to persuade people to believe something. This one is designed to enable people to prove something at scale, in real time, and under constraints that typically favor centralized authority. This is really what we're talking about when we say urgent work. Don't use the word radical on your agency website unless you're doing work like this. Okay, next up, this is Reverse Media Schedule by Dentsu Creative Aotearoa Auckland. And the concept is litter as media. Every piece of branded waste in the environment, and there is a lot, bottles, cans, wrappers, those are all technically an impression, not a paid one, not a controlled one, but nonetheless a visible brand exposure in the real world. And the data shows that this brand exposure has a downside. When people encounter a brand as litter, it can reduce their willingness to pay for the brand by 2%. So the campaign asks, what if instead of treating trash cleanup as charity, we start treating pollution as negative media inventory? And so an organization called Sea Cleaners, who has spent 2 decades removing over 21 million liters of waste from New Zealand's coastlines, partnered with JCDecaux to build a system that quantifies exactly this. And to get this done, they used a mix of litter audits, Nielsen audience data, and media modeling, and they basically mapped where branded waste appears, how often it's seen, and what that exposure is effectively costing brands in perception. And from there, they created a reverse media schedule, which is a new framework that treats cleaning up specific locations like buying back bad ad placements. Brands are able to see their litter footprint, benchmark it against competitors, and track the reputational value of removal in the same language that they already are using for media planning. So in other words, instead of paying for impressions, companies are now being shown the value of removing them. Interestingly, Nielsen data across coastal destinations found that branded litter isn't just noticed, it's also remembered with measurable recall days beyond the day of exposure. Plus, they found that a strong majority of consumers say that they view brands more favorably when they actively support cleanup efforts. Big surprise. So yes, this is an environmental initiative at its core, but it's also a media product in disguise. It's a way to convert sustainability into a measurable line item inside marketing budgets. And that's why it's on my list. Asking brands to behave better is somewhat of a fool's errand, but speaking to them in the only language they already optimize for, reach, impressions, and media value, turning pollution into a key metric they can no longer ignore. That's playing chess, and that's exactly the kind of energy we need while legislation follows glacially behind us. Well done. Next up by Tecate, Welcome Back Paisano by La Pub Mexico City. This is a campaign built explicitly around the deportation of Mexicans by the current United States administration. Paisano means countryman, and Tecate here is using that concept of welcoming back their countrymen as a repatriation and a reintegration into a community, because that process really requires careful infrastructure. The campaign connects repatriated Mexicans with employment at Tienda 6, which is a chain of convenience stores, and this is meant to be a pathway into economic stability. It focuses on training, jobs, and opportunities to participate in store operations and expansion. Surely this issue felt like something Tecate at least had to acknowledge as a brand. Over 170,000 Mexicans were deported in the first year of President Trump's second term, and this creates a sudden and significant need for reintegration pathways. The initiative launched with a commitment to employ 130 repatriated individuals over 2 years, and they designed a structure to scale along with store growth. The creative for this campaign was almost playful, thanking the US for sending the best workforce in the world back home, which is a very elegant way to recapture the tone as one of resilience and of pride. I love campaigns that are built around this kind of prompt, which is, what are the problems keeping our audience up at night? What are they facing that's haunting them? Are we in a position to uniquely solve them? Next up is the Philipstown Wirecar Grand Prix by Accenture Song, South Africa, Cape Town. This is one of the more technically ambitious projects that appear on the Titanium shortlist this year, and it introduced me, and I'm sure many people, to a long-standing tradition in Philipstown, which is a small town in the Northern Cape, in which children build homemade racing cars from scrap wire and metal and other repurposed materials. And these are functional cars that are engineered over weeks and months, and they're human-powered, raced across a 3-kilometer street course. And this happens through the town in an annual community Grand Prix. And so the film component of this project was directed by Ward and produced by Giant Films with Accenture Song, and it has gorgeous cinematography that documents the full build and race cycle of this event. The spirit of this sport is improvisation of materials and mechanical problem solving, but it's also an identity building exercise in a community with limited formal recreational infrastructure. It means a lot, but the film isn't the end of it. From there, the project expands into a data-driven media system. So during the actual Grand Prix, the Wirecars were tracked across the course using a combination of timing checkpoints and location data capture. Then they used that race data to reconstruct the event digitally, which allowed the race to be replayed and experienced beyond Philipstown, effectively turning this hyper-local tradition into a globally accessible narrative layer. And there was also an e-com layer. The Wirecars and the related handcrafted items could also be purchased with proceeds flowing back into Philipstown Wirecar Foundation, transforming this simple race into a multi-platform system where participation and story and funding all reinforce each other. And I highly recommend you check this one out because, as I've recently learned, Wirecar racing is thrilling. Last but not least, I could not leave out Vehicles of Hope by Differ, Stockholm, and Colony. This is, of course, the project that repurposed the Pope Mobile used by Pope Francis during his 2014 visit to Bethlehem, transforming it into a fully functional mobile clinic designed for children, meant for deployment in Gaza. The vehicle was personally approved and blessed by Pope Francis before his death, and then it was formally converted under the direction of Caritas Jerusalem. It underwent a very technical transformation. The open rear platform where the Pope once stood has been fully enclosed now into a clinical treatment space. The interior includes a triage area, an oxygen supply, refrigeration for vaccines, and there's also equipment for emergency pediatric care, including diagnostics, sutures, and respiratory support. The vehicle itself is reinforced for conflict zone conditions. So the chassis and suspension have all been upgraded to handle damaged roads and debris-heavy environments, and the unit itself is designed to operate off-grid for several hours with its own power system and its own backup battery infrastructure. The Vehicle for Hope is designed to treat up to 200 pediatric patients per day, and this is obviously a highly symbolic conversion of a vehicle, and so it really became a global story about humanitarian access and children's health and the collapse of local healthcare systems in conflict zones. It's a visible symbol of solidarity for children who are affected by war. It's all at once a clinic, a logistics asset, a communications platform, all built around a single object that is, in essence, shorthand. And that's our Carney shortlist for the titanium category of the Cannes Lions 2026 event. Winners will be announced on Friday, June 26th, the final day of the festival. Honestly, I'll be stoked if any of the shortlist wins except for the Oreo cows. And no shade to the Oreo cows, they are magnificent creatures, but how did they get on this list? Like, the social impact, I think, is that we boosted Oreo sales by 12%, but modeling milk bottles after the exact markings of individual cows is just, it's a breathtaking use of free will. Who knows though, maybe the Oreo cows will be a dark horse. But that wraps it up this week for the Daily Carnage Show. Thanks so much for joining me. Make sure to like and subscribe across all of our socials, and don't forget to subscribe to the Daily Carnage newsletter. We send an email every day of the work week to keep you the sharpest marketer in the room. And if you want to talk back, you can always drop us a line or a comment, or join us over on our subreddit or our exclusive Facebook group. And that's it for me. Have a good one, Carnies, and I'll see you in the inbox.